So obviously I say this every time, but I mean it every time. Big warm welcome to all of you. Without an audience, there'd be no point in doing any of this. And we're all getting old hands, you know, old in the best possible sense of the word, that we're becoming extremely familiar with the process of getting onto Zoom and what that entails, and being part of a distant audience, but how lovely it is that we can do that. So I have the very great pleasure today to introduce you to Angelique. So Angelique is a super trooper, and it was some time ago that we had our conversation to set up this particular conversation with me. So I've got quite sketchy idea in my head about Angelique, but she's going to fill us in. She's going to tell us all about herself. I've already complimented her on her magnificent background. She does look, she looks rather like a queen on a throne. A rather elegant throne and a very beautiful queen. So with that in mind, I'm going to start off by saying to you, Angelique, obviously welcome, but would you like to start off by telling us all about yourself, because I'm sure everybody would like to know.
Wow, that's indeed an open invitation. Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I think when you've lived a number of years, then there could potentially be an awful lot to tell. I shall give you the sort of quick whistle stop tour. Normally the first thing is people say to me, where were you from? And I normally know that what they mean is, where's your accent from? So I play a little game and I say, I'm a Geordie, I'm up in South Shields when I'm up in the northeast, and you can see the quizzical looks on the faces. You do not sound like a Geordie. I come from quite a mixed background. I'm partly South African. I've got a Swiss mother. I lived and worked all over the world, and I left South Africa more than about 40 years ago. So I've had a corporate career. My passion has always been fashion, color, and I kept coming back to that time and time again. My father had no truck with the sort of what he saw as creative roles and creative jobs. So I wasn't allowed to pursue my sort of passion for fashion and color. So I ended up in the sort of traditional, more scientific route of education, ended up in the corporate world, worked as IBM, worked for Harley Davidson. That was wonderful because I had the opportunity to ride their bikes. I love motorcycles and cars. I loved your post recently, Tricia, and I've loved any sort of form of transport. So then in my mid-20s, I decided to leave the corporate world and actually pursue my fashion dream. And I trained in London. So I then worked as a designer for myself for a number of years, then got drawn back into the corporate world. And then just before lockdown, I completed my latest book and went to the publisher, and here is the culmination of that. It's called Hags with Attitude. It's published in the next couple of days, and that really precipitated a whole change of career. I thought I'd better put my money where my mouth is and practice what I preach in the book. So I worked as an academic, as an executive coach for, 25 years. And I relaunched myself and my identity as a personal stylist. And I do color analysis, image analysis, wardrobe analysis, all the rest of it online. And that's where I am now. I still work for the university as an academic 2 days a week, but I'm slowly letting go of that so I can spend my time and my energy on what I truly am passionate about. So that's a very quick whistle stop to it, Tricia.
That is perfect, and it's a perfect setting. You see it's setting the scene really for your past, your background, your expertise, and obviously the passion that you have in your life for all things creative and color. So I'm very interested in that book because you called it Hags with Attitude. So I love that idea. But it's Hags with a dot between each word, so it's HAGS, so that presumably stands for something. Is that right? So what does that stand for?
Yes, indeed. Actually, the title has sort of a number of purposes. First of all, I think it's so that we, as older women, don't take ourselves too seriously in the first instance and have a bit of a laugh at our own expense. Um, it is also actually on a serious side. I've got a chapter in the book that explores fairy tales, because if you think about fairy tales, absolutely. Use the whole sort of title as hags to create this image of older women. And I think it has a psychological, quite profound impact on how we as older women see ourselves and perhaps how society see us. And in fact, I think, Tricia, you mentioned in a few blogs, some weeks ago about the power of words and language. And I think psychologically that really is very important. But then it's also a mnemonic, which really captures all of the research I've done for the book for how can we age well. So the H stands for a healthy living, obviously eating, getting enough sleep, looking after ourselves, and really taking time for ourselves as well. The A, I think, is the sort of thread that runs not only through the book, but absolutely everything I do, and that's about attitude. And I have to say, I love going on Tricia's Super Troopers and just see the attitude that everybody has in terms of getting older and embracing life and not thinking, oh, well, I'm a certain age, I can't do that. So the attitude really is key with how we approach life and how we would actually experience not only getting older, but any age and any stage of life, really. The G is for get up and go, so exercise. And again, I love your pink exercise bike and the dumbbells. You certainly won over me there, but I love yoga. I do yoga every day and I do a lot of walking. So the get up and go, and the S is for social connections. And again, my goodness, I've seen so many positive things come from the Super Troopers that demonstrates, we don't just have to meet with people physically. Of course, we're all social creatures. We want to tangibly feel and hug and touch somebody, but we can replace that with some of the social media and certainly the platform that Super Troopers has facilitated and made available. So it is the mnemonic. So there's a number of different facets to the title.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Just picking up on your last point there, an observation. I think before lockdown, last March, few of us, especially for our generation, would have accepted the power of social media for meaningful contact. Let me put it that way. We would have probably disdained it fairly heavily. We would have thought it was unreal, that it was a zats, it was not something that you could say was particularly helpful or fulfilling in terms of human, contact. And we were forced then into our homes through lockdown, and suddenly we all had to get used to Zoom. And, the first thing that I put out was very much around video, a much more traditional medium, because I would record something, I'd put it out and people would then see it when they felt like seeing it. And so that was one way. And then I started to get much more interested in Zoom. And then I started Super Troopers. And what I found really brilliantly, because I live alone, as do a lot of people watching this, is that this, yes, it is at one remove, but it can be enormously helpful, enormously satisfying and enriching and supportive. So all of those things have come as a real surprise to me, I have to say, and probably to quite a few of the people watching this, who this time last year, if we told them, would not have believed any of the things that I've just said. They would have said, no, I'm sorry, I don't like that idea. So I think that we're in such a different place, and it's been actually really helpful to us to push us into a place where we would have been outside our comfort zone and made it now that we are inside our comfort zone. And I love the fact that you're sitting talking there. Where are you in the world, Angelique?
I'm in the Northeast today.
Okay, you're in the Northeast, I'm in the southwest of London, and we probably have people watching this who may be in other parts of the world. I know, last week I talked to someone who's actually in South Africa. So love your book, love the title, love the things that it stands for. So now I think what I'd really like to do, because I think it will pick up on a lot of things that will interest people, I'd like to know, that looks like quite a thick book to me. It's obviously got a lot of words in it. So what was your overarching objective with that book? Who was the audience? What were you trying to do with it?
Oh, really good question, Tricia. I think in the first instance, it was sort of reflected my own experience of getting older. You know, when all the different milestones that we go through, you know, from the sort of perimenopause to the menopause and beyond. And I think just being a researcher, trying to find and make some sense of the experiences, there was really quite a dearth of material available. It was either sort of really heavy academic language, and I thought I could do with just some plain simple language from women that might have had experiences like me. Where do I go? What do I do? I mean, just a very, very simple example, which again, I can thank the Super Troopers for. I always had really strong, long nails, and I loved my nails always manicured. And my goodness, my nails just completely absolutely packed up on me. They split, they flaked, all the rest of it. And trying to find answers to that, the medical profession, when I sort of connected with the GPs or whatever, were very dismissive of that. So just a simple practical thing like that. So, and I think the other thing that really annoyed me was the image or the lack of image of older women. And again, I just go back a little bit to my days on motorbikes working for Harley Davidson. I would be sort of rolled out as the sort of image of you know, of a woman on a motorbike, and I had all sorts of comments around that. So what is so strange about a woman on a motorbike? You know, my father was a pilot. I used to fly. I loved trucks. I used to drive around in trucks. I love sports cars. So what is so strange about it? But then certainly being involved in the sort of PR and marketing side, there was a complete absence of older women associated with cars and motorcycles and those sort of things. I mean, you've mentioned in one of your blogs, and I absolutely agree, the only time you saw older people were for some medical image or need. And I wanted to say, well, hang on a moment, I'm an older woman, and you know, I still love life. I still get a thrill out of many things that is associated with younger people. So I think that also prompted it. So it was just purely being able to get in touch with women who had that experience, and then to challenge the stereotypes in the media wherever I possibly could. So I think it was, again, a number of different levels, and really just to share with women, because the book has stories of not only my own journey, but the journey of other women through this process of getting older. And it's just to highlight, you know, that just because we get older doesn't mean to say life ceases, or we stop enjoying life, or we stop getting excited about various things in life. And you know, longevity is really a very new, recent phenomenon. There is no blueprint, really. And I think that's exciting, because what I'm trying to encourage women to think about is, hey, we can write the script. We don't have to follow what that image or stereotype of older women is all about. And I would actually say, I think we have a responsibility to show the future a generation of older women that life doesn't all of a sudden stop when you hit a certain birthday. So, number of different motivations for writing the book.
Fantastic, Angelique. That's a lovely answer. And actually, this series that we're doing, you know, all about me, bringing super troopers on and asking about their stories, is designed entirely to show that, you know, to show the diversity of women's lives and interests, and just how much life there is in the old girl yet, you know. I feel that. That's the message to get across loudly and clearly. If you've got any points to or questions for Angelique, don't forget to pop them in the chat function. We are going to have our breakout groups, and we will come back to those questions afterwards. I'm going to channel down a little bit into your passion for fashion and colour, because I think that will interest a lot of the people watching this. So have you got a section on that in your book, and how did you approach that?
Yes, I do actually, but to be quite honest, it wasn't really written from my perspective, because when I started the book, I was still very much the executive coach and the academic, with just for my personal perspective, the love of clothes and color. So one of my, actually she became one of my students, one of my postgrad students, who is a color analyst, and I got her to give all sorts of tips and ideas. And it's only since I actually completed the book, as I say, I sort of woke up one morning with this epiphany and thinking, you know, I really ought to go and do what I've always wanted to do. So that sort of came almost after the book, but very much in keeping with what I have in the book. You know, silly things like we don't have to go and spend a fortune. I mean, I'm very much keen on environmental issues, and the fashion industry is probably one of the worst culprits in the world. So on my website I have a monthly blog, and the last couple of blogs have talked extensively about slow fashion, you know, so that we take a much more sensible approach to clothes and fashion and so on. And I think it's not only kind for the environment, but it's kind on our wallets, and it actually makes getting dressed so much easier. So, and for me, the whole journey starts with color. It's the thread that really runs through everything, because if we understand the colors that suit us, to begin with, it'll give us confidence because we'll have a glow. Um, Everything that we wear, the makeup, our hair color, everything will fit and blend together without having to sort of be standalone items, but it'll create what we call the sort of circle of color, which is what is near and surrounding the face. Um, but it really is the starting point. We can then create a wardrobe that we know fits together. We don't have to think, well, what am I going to wear this morning? Because I've got a pair of trousers I'd love to wear, but oh, I don't really have a top or a jacket or a jumper or a scarf to go with it. So we don't create the sort of mismatched wardrobe, but we actually have a wardrobe that just harmonizes and blends, and it just makes life a lot easier, to be honest. We can think about much more exciting things than worrying about what we're going to wear.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of things that popped into my head while you were talking there. I think lockdown has probably accelerated that whole thing about slow fashion because suddenly, you know, we don't have an excuse to go out and buy something new because we've got nowhere to go. Just like we're not doing anything, you know. And I don't know about you, I just get bored with my clothes, and I just think if I'm going somewhere, I think, oh, I'll treat myself to a new whatever, you know. And the other interesting thing about being on Zoom all the time is that I don't actually think about anything below about here, you know, about my chest height. It's like, how does that look on Zoom? And have lived for several months now in quite stretchy bottom half, which is really comfortable. But you know, every now and again I do get bored and I think, oh, I will treat myself to something new. But it has definitely made a difference to my attitude to clothes. And I've been digging out things out of the back of my wardrobe more than I would have done before, just for variety, because you know, you've got to buy it online, and it's there's a hassle attached to that, factor attached to that. And then the second thing, I just totally love what you said about if you do know your colours, you know that at the moment, I just want to say this to everybody, you know, we're running a competition at the moment. My true colours cool, my true colours warm. And I'm loving it because I think it's such a brilliant way for you all to educate each other, you know, by seeing the pictures. We don't have enough pictures like this in our lives of fabulous older women looking amazing because they're getting their colours to work for them really well.
Yes.
And as you so rightly say, I mean, look at what you're wearing, Angelique. You're clearly warm toned. You've got wonderful red hair. You've got a sort of an orangey browny lipstick on. You've got glasses that work with your lipstick and your hair. And then you've got that gorgeous autumnal shades that you're wearing with that beautiful brooch and everything. Everything works together to create the look that you've created there. And I do absolutely love the fact that, like you, I can open my wardrobe, everything goes with everything else, because I wear cool colors and they all work together. So all my earrings, you know, these earrings will go with a lot of things that I've got, etc., etc., etc. So I do absolutely love all of that. Tell me a little bit more about, I'm interested in your fairy tale idea. So have you got that? Is that in the book? And
yes, I devote a whole chapter to that. And actually, it's really quite interesting. It came about when I first started the idea with the book. Um, I belong to a closed Facebook group in France, where I live in the south of France. And I thought it was a group of about 2,000 women. And I thought, well, I'll moot the idea of some titles. And I happened to say, I'm thinking of calling the book Hags with Attitude. And my goodness, I was fascinated by the response. I was absolutely vilified for calling older women hags. And I thought, wow, now that really, as the academic, the researcher, really got my sort of juices flowing. And I thought, now that's really interesting. I need to try and unpick this and understand that reaction that I got from women. And sort of one thing led to the other. And I then started delving into stories and fairy tales. And my goodness, it's just amazing how there's this whole notion that if you're the helpless, beautiful young princess to be rescued, of course, by the gorgeous, handsome prince, everything is fine. And then, of course, the other character in the book or in the fairy tales are always this old, embittered, gnarled older woman who is hell-bent on making sure that the beautiful princess is not going to meet up with her prince or whatever. And of course, besides, she hunts for young children to stick them in the pot and eat them, or hopefully drink their blood so that it's the elixir of life, etc. I know I'm embellishing, but through that is that thread of how older women are portrayed. And my goodness, you see that in so many different facets of life, in society, in the way older women are. I mean, if you follow politics, you look at the way female politicians are treated. Oh my goodness, the questions, the challenges would never be aimed at men in the way that they're aimed at women, particularly if they are older women. So I then, because as an academic, I'm interested in philosophy, obviously, but a practical philosophy. And for me, what we don't realize is that sort of drip feed of these stereotypes, actually we collude with it. We begin to create and reinforce some of those stereotypes. And I think that was the other reason, was to try and just raise our awareness. So there is a book on sort of a chapter on practical philosophy, and a chapter on sort of just unpicking stories a little bit, so that we can just become aware and not use that language. How many times do people say, or do we all say, oh, that's a senior moment? No, because that reinforces. Young people can have senior moments. Young people can forget about things, and it's got nothing to do with age. And I think that sort of tiny little drip feed actually helps to create and perpetuate these stereotypes. So that's the one sort of reason, but it's also to highlight that historically, hags were actually the holy women. They were the sages where people would come to from their village and their communities, because they had the knowledge about medicine, about herbal remedies, etc. They were actually seen as holy women. So hags then became, unfortunately, a derivative from the holy woman. So I think it's also, for me, trying to replace the status of older women in society. And, you know, we've got an accumulation of so much knowledge, wealth, experience, wisdom that we can share. You know, I'm very much a supporter of intergenerational communities and activities, and where we can learn from each other. And again, you know, as an academic, you engage with younger people. I was on a Zoom meeting this morning with one of my young degree apprentices, and they have a very different view of the world from what I do, and how wonderful to be able to share that. So we have a lot that we can pass back. And as we've seen, as you mentioned, you know, we've learned so much over the last year with technology and all the rest of it. So we have a responsibility, I think, to make that wisdom and knowledge and experience available to the younger generations, and not hide it, not apologize, and not feeling guilty about it, because it's a life well lived and we have a lot we can share.
That's all really, really interesting. I love the idea of the drip, drip feed and the cultural assumptions and the way that we use language and all that, all the ways that that feeds in, into our subconscious almost, in terms of accepting some of the things that are negative about being older, whereas we're all living in the reality of being older and finding it to be mostly amazingly good. You know, I wouldn't say always. Obviously, there are disadvantages and drawbacks. However, it's the lived experience is very different from the assumptions that are made about what it means to be old and what it means to be an older woman. I think it's quite interesting you said about the younger generation. I suspect that in terms of generation, the younger ones like Bryony, you know, the really young ones like her, probably don't have quite so much problem with this as the middle age. So my daughter, for instance, who's 46 now, all of her friends are starting to say things like, oh God, you know, I'm getting so old, and you know, so mid 40s. And Anna says to me so many times, I love working with you, Mum, and love working with all our customers, because I have learned not to be afraid of getting older. And in fact, I've also learned that I'm still really young. What a benefit to work in this, you know, in this industry in the way that she does. So I think maybe there's something that we need to shift within the consciousness of the middle-aged. And a bit like you, I was talking to somebody last Friday. She's 55 and she's thinking about starting a new business, and she said, you've really, really inspired me, Tricia, because you started a new business when you were 10 years older than me. And I said to her, but think about it, Sarah, you're only 55. If you live till you're 100, which is perfectly possible,
Yeah.
you're just a little bit over halfway through.
Yeah.
You're not nearly at the end. So we think of 55 in terms of working life as near to 60, which is just about at the end. And I said, if you reframe that and start thinking of yourself as being in the middle, not 5 years off the end, you'll change your attitude to this new business completely. And of course you must start a new business, you know, why wouldn't you? And I think this is what we need. This is what reframing is. It's these expectations and so on. And I love the fact that you're talking about the cultural assumptions, the language, and so on and so forth, because it's only if we start engaging with that and thinking about it that we can start to change it. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've just loved that conversation. Where can we get your book if we want to read it?
I shall put a link on Super Troopers if you want. It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
So if people just put in H.G. You know, the hags with the dots with attitude.
Okay.
It's published on Friday, but it's available for pre-order.
Okay, well, I mean, absolutely well done and brilliant for writing that book, because I think it sounds very, very interesting. I'm always very interested to read whatever people are writing now around this area. In a few weeks' time, I think it's in the spring actually, we've got somebody called Dr. Julia Twigg who's going to come onto the this Tricia Talk time, and she's written a brilliant book called Fashion and Age. I don't know whether you're familiar with that book, but
Yes,
it's
yes.
an academic. She's a university lecturer. She has amazing things to say about fashion and age, and I thought that book was stunning. So I love to read other people's views, and your book sounds fascinating. Let's go to Bryony. Have you got any observations or questions there, Bryony?
Yes, so Rosie wants to know, have you got any ideas for classic clothes in your wardrobe that you can wear again and again?
Oh my goodness, yes. My wardrobe consists of classic clothes. I've got clothes that I've had for more than 30 years. And my absolute mantra is, certainly from a slow fashion point of view, buy as expensive clothes as you can afford, because it will last you for a very long time, and buy clothes that are classical styles.
Mm-hmm.
You can then every season maybe bring a little bit of a contemporary feel to it with a scarf or a bit of jewelry or maybe a top, etc. But classical clothes that are well made will stand the test of time and is really, really good investment for your money. So think about it. Don't sort of be tempted with the cheaper clothes, because cheap buys, expensive buy, because they're not well made, they don't last, they will fall apart, and they will never look as good as a timeless, well-made classical garment. So really focus on that would be my advice to everyone.
We're going to just to come in here. We're going to I think again it's in April time. We're going to have Penny Coater on this Tuesday session, and she writes a blog called Frugal Fashion, and she lives in Brighton, and buys a huge amount of her clothes in charity shops. And she is one of the most stylish people I know. But I've been shopping with her in charity shops. I sort of said to her, show me how. So there's a real skill to it. So she homes in on quality fabrics, beautifully made garments, things that do have a label in the back, and she spots them. She's like a heat-seeking missile. I mean, you put her into a charity shop and she just goes straight for the best stuff, and she'll look at it and look at the seams and look at how it's made, and obviously she needs to fit her. But I think I think you're right. If I know that in my wardrobe, the things that last and the things that last and stay in shape and everything are the things that are slightly more expensive. But again, if you are, and Penny's going to tell us all her secrets. So if you are interested in pursuing something like that, you can get, you call them pre-loved, don't you? Pre-loved by somebody else. So I quite like that idea. Anything else, Bryony?
Yes, there are a few questions. So, Angelique, are there any retailers who you think have successfully tapped into and understand what the midlife plus market wants?
Wow, that's a good question. Again, I would say the higher end of the market, because they are not so tied to constantly producing a new line. And of course, that would be aimed at the younger generation, because you can imagine it's constantly changing. So again, going to the quality end of the retailers, their clothes tend to be clothes that are, because they are timeless and classical, maybe with a modern spin. I mean, for example, I personally love Jaeger. I've got Jaeger garments in my wardrobe that I've had for many, many years. Basler, some of the German designers are really good as well. So again, I would aim for the high end of the market, because they're not part and tied up in the sort of very fast production of new fashion every few weeks, etc.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, Angelique, that Marks and Spencer's have bought Jaeger, and it will be very, very interesting to see if they manage to hit that sweet spot. Because if Marks and Spencer's could use some of the Jaeger, I don't know, design, quality approaches for older women and get it right, I mean, they will make an absolute killing. And it would be the savior, I think, of Marks and Spencer's, because they've really lost the plot. But I think that you know, it's quite clever buy for them, and it'll be really interesting to see if they can harness the power of that, you know, of those qualities that Jaeger brings. It'll be interesting to see. Another one, Bryony?
Yes, I think this is quite an important question from Joanna. So Joanna said that earlier she was reading about a woman who hasn't been outside for 12 months due to COVID. She used to regularly meet up with friends for coffee and events, but now is too afraid to go outside. How do you maintain confidence in these troubled times?
Yes, that is, again, similar to Joanna's comments. I've come across that so many times. I think, again, what is important to maintain confidence is to get up, dress for yourself in the morning, put your makeup on, because it's amazing how our confidence can be eroded over a period of time. And if the world sort of gets smaller and smaller and smaller, we can very quickly or very easily lose ourselves. So I think it's to stay in touch with the world out there, you know, through the television, interesting educational sort of programs, debates, discussions, and of course, something like Super Troopers, because you're being exposed to different points of views, different ideas. There's constant changes of topics of discussion, but I think that social connection, to be able to stay in touch as much as you possibly can through platforms such as this, not to isolate yourself and cut yourself off from people. You may be cut off from the outside world, and some people may legitimately have to self-isolate because they are vulnerable, but you can still reach out and get in touch with the world out there. Have virtual coffee mornings, get in touch with people, join various groups, learn a new skill, learn a new hobby. There's so much available, and it takes discipline, and sometimes we have to force ourselves to do so, but that would certainly be my advice. Just because you can't go out to meet people face to face, that is a wonderful way to make sure we don't go down that slippery slope of losing our confidence, really.
Yeah. Sorry, Tricia, I can see you want to say something.
I think it's a really, really important point, and I do think that at the end of this, there may be some things that need to, I don't know, we need to find ways to help people who've become actually quite, is it agoraphobic when you don't go out? Yeah, it's agoraphobic, isn't it? Because I can understand that might happen to some people. I totally agree with everything that you said, Angelique. And it always worries me when we have people, it's getting better, but we have people on these calls, and when we say, we're going to put you into groups and you're going to meet some new people, we get about 20 people will drop off, and you think, why do they do that? Is it because they lack confidence? Is it because they just can't be bothered, or maybe they just want to go to the loo or have a cup of tea? But you know what I mean? There's a part of me that it really worries me, because I think even that can be too much for some people. It's like a bridge too far, and I think we might need to give extra support to certain people at the end of all this. There could be a real issue with it, but this is a great way to get over that. You know, it's helping me enormously, I tell you, because I'm very happy at home. I'm very happy on my own, and this forces me into a social situation. And you know, believe it or not, I need to do this stuff, as do I think a lot of people who are on this call. Anything else, Bryony?
I think that's it. There are people asking about your colours business, Angelique. So perhaps if you could send us the information, we'll put it alongside the link for your book as well, underneath the video and in Super Troopers, if you don't mind.
I will certainly do that.
Perfect.
I'd just say, you know, the general comments. I mean, I have so loved, obviously, because of my background, I've so loved the competition and seeing people in their wonderful colors. It really was so heartening. There were some questions about, you know, do you think I'm warm or cool, or, you know, am I changing? I would just add a little bit of caution. It is quite an in-depth analysis to be able to really determine what somebody's colors really are. And it's better not to sort of jump to the first color and perhaps have the wrong color and then build a wardrobe around it and it's colors that don't really suit you. So do take care and get some good advice as to what really is the colors, and the compliments you get wearing certain colors will often be a good indication as well. So just a little bit of a word of caution there. But you all, for all of you that have been involved in that, you look absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, I think most people get it right, actually, and I think we do tend to be drawn to colours that suit us quite well. I certainly have been all my life. I've just seen certain colours and gone, oh, I love that colour, you know. But then I look at somebody like you, and you're similar colouring to my daughter, and I just see you and see her wearing something. Oh, I really love that colour on you, you know. Don't like it on me. Thank you, Angelique. I think that was very wise advice. So we're more or less done then, Bryony? Yeah, okay. All right, so it's my pleasure to say thank you very much indeed to Angelique. That was a really, really stimulating and interesting, more or less, hour we've been together. And I will definitely get your book, and I'd be delighted to read it and see what you have to say, as I'm sure quite a lot of people listening to this today will be encouraged to do so. So again, thanks all of you for coming, and come again. What are we doing tomorrow? I lose track of time. It's Tuesday. Tomorrow is Wednesday. So we've got Lenny. Lenny's talking about stir fry with salmon or prawns, and she's made some delicious chocolate muffins for us. So that's something to look forward to. So healthy chocolate muffins. And then on Thursday, Lindsay and I are doing lower body strength. And on Friday, we have a lovely film called The Midwife to discuss. So that's the program for the rest of the week. So bye-bye, everybody. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye, everyone. See ya.